Now, this is interesting. Israel's launched a surprise military exercise on its borders with Syria and Lebanon. A military spokesperson says that the drill is intended to simulate combat scenarios in northern Israel and to improve the Air Force's readiness for combat. Well, we have our defense correspondent, Daniel Tzemach, joining us for more details on this. So first of all, why does the IDF hold surprise drills just like this? What is the point here?
Right, Natasha. So first, it's just important to acknowledge the fact that this doesn't happen very often. This is what you would call an extraordinary sort of occurrence when it comes to a surprise drill that happens in such close proximity to another drill that was focused on the same exact region. Just last week, we saw the lightning drill that was held in northern Israel, and it also focused on the Hezbollah threat and on days of fighting. And it does seem as though it's a similar situation again this time. So it does seem as though there's a little bit more urgency as far as the IDF is concerned in preparing for potential confrontations on that northern front. Again, surprise drills don't happen a lot, but the general point here and the underlying meaning is that they want to be prepared for something when it surprises the combat troops, and for them to be prepared quickly and to be able to deploy all the different tools that the IDF has at its disposal, whether it's every single type of aircraft, which was indeed a part of this drill, or those ground forces who are, of course, expected to be patrolling the border, maybe even entering into Lebanese territory, or just protecting the border communities in northern Israel.
Now, you just mentioned it. This is the second such surprise drill within just 1 week. Does this indicate that Israel is highly concerned about impending threats in the region? And if so, where from exactly?
Right, it seems so, because we haven't seen this sort of activity on that northern front or anywhere really in such a really jam-packed period of time in quite a while. And if it doesn't take an expert to look at the context surrounding the issues pertaining to Iran's military ambitions, if you will, in the region, to understand that this is a very critical juncture for anyone who is trying to offset the Iranian influence. And obviously one of the top parties there is Israel. And when it comes to the northern front, they're looking at Hezbollah, a group that has been supported by Iran, that is operating not only in Lebanon, but also has proxies that are operating in Syria. And if we look at that arena, Natasha, we've seen a lot of activity in Syria over the past couple of days, even in the last 24 hours, that have been attributed to Israel. So we're seeing a lot of things happening at once. Whether or not Israel is indeed responsible, of which it appears that they are, they're not taking responsibility, of course, but it does seem as though all these issues happening in such a close time frame, but also in the same really geographical sphere, does raise the possibility of further confrontations and an escalation of those tensions, not just with drills, but potential actually military clashes.
Right. Now, today there was an unusual gathering of the IDF General Staff Forum in the north. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Right, so we're talking about another issue that would raise the suspicion that there is something amiss in northern Israel. And we're talking about a fairly high-level meeting between IDF's top brass. The IDF Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Aviv Kochavi, brought together some of the top commanders of the Northern Command in Israel in order to address certain issues and really to dissect, if you will, the strategy when it comes to the northern frontier, which is Israel's top priority frontier when it comes to the threats that it faces. It faces threats on all borders, but there's no question that that northern front, which is now seen as a unified front between Lebanon and Syria, is the top priority issue. And because of that, he spoke to those top commanders of the Northern Command, the head of the Northern Command himself, amongst others, discussing the strategy, the tactical sort of operational abilities that they have at their disposal. And obviously this is all happening at the backdrop of that surprise exercise, which is due to end Wednesday evening. Of course, we'll likely hear some conclusions, if you will, after that exercise culminates. But it does seem as though the IDF is preparing for any eventuality, still on the ready for potential Hezbollah strike in what Hezbollah says is retaliation for Israel killing one of its top commanders in Syria just this last summer. And still, they haven't been successful, as far as they are concerned, Hezbollah that is, in striking Israeli assets or Israeli military assets. So they're still on high alert in northern Israel.